everyone. Welcome to this week's Karma Cards. The good news this week is it's pretty quiet, so there's not a lot going on at the moment, I should say. We did have a major X class flare, I believe it was between Sunday and Monday. And so that gave us a big boost of energy. But in terms of astrology, there's not a lot going on except a trine happening between Jupiter in Gemini, where Jupiter just moved to, and Pluto in Aquarius, which represents the age that we are in. What's interesting about this air trine, so Jupiter is the great expander. It represents our growth. Pluto represents empowerment, power, how we empower ourselves or free ourselves from what is holding us out of our power. And when these two come together in an air trine, air is about the mental plane. And so it really has to do with what we're holding on to in here, what wants to grow, and what needs to move out of the way so that we can feel empowered in this growth. So a big message that's coming through is you have to let go of the past. And when I asked my team what was the message this week, everything I got was about, allowing ourselves to soften in some way so that we can truly grow and move forward. And in some cases, we just have to let go of some old thinking that might be hampering our own growth and empowerment. So some of the things that came up that they said could help you get into your empowerment and growth are things like letting go of this feeling that you have to heal in time. And I know that this is one that can come up for a lot of people as we think about moving into like new earth energy or higher and better timelines, that we might still feel a heavy energy of some of the healing that we have to do. And it's interesting because sometimes that can create this sort of fear that maybe I'm not doing enough and I'm going to miss it. And I've had that feeling many times. Many times I go into that feeling. And what my team has always said to me is that it would be cruel of us to give you the awareness of something greater that you can move into, knowing that you're not going there. So I want to share that with you. If you hold on to that as anxiety, this is your call to allow yourself to let that go, that you wouldn't be given the awareness of a greater level of growth you could move into if you weren't fully capable and already on your way to it. So we've got to soften ourselves a little bit for whatever healing we recognize we still need to do. You're doing a great job. This job was never easy. No one on the other side is assuming you should already be done with it by now. It's like an onion, and you're going to keep experiencing that you've healed a layer and then another layer shows itself to you, right? You find how much depth you're holding on to, and there's no timer on you. So if you're holding that feeling of like, oh, I've got to get through this, or I should have been through this, other people seem like they're through it, why am I back here? I'm going to miss something. You can let go of that fear. And another part they want to add to this is if you're holding on to being too hard on yourself, again, I share this with you as someone who struggles with that all the time. I don't know if it's perfectionism. I don't know if it's because we were raised in like a hyper masculine energy where it's like, buckle, what did they say? Buckle up, buttercup. No, it's pull yourself up by the bootstraps. I forget the term. You can put it in the comments if you know what I'm talking about. There's terms it's like, get over it, move forward. Sorry, life is hard, keep going, or something like that. We can tend to kind of knuckle down and power through. There's one, you know what I'm saying, where it's like we're forcing ourselves forward and we lose some of that soft, nurturing energy towards ourselves. And we are really in a time where we want to be in balance. We want to be able to have our divine masculine drive to move forward, to reach out, to give, and to express. But we also want to honor the nurturing, soft, holding space that the divine feminine allows for us. And this is really a time where activating that, especially when it comes to healing and when it comes to the energy your inner child holds. So the inner child usually holds those old wounds that are the core or seed issues that turn into our defense mechanisms, which turns into our behaviors and turns into the actions that we take. It's a long process, but at the center of it is this innocent child who was learning how to cope when whatever they were doing at the time wasn't acceptable, whether it wasn't acceptable to the outside world or they learned that they shouldn't find it acceptable within themselves, whether it's being very sensitive or being afraid to take the first step, whatever it is that's going on. That's just two of many, many things it could be. A lot of times the response from the world was, we don't have time for this, so figure it out on your own or get over it. And that created that hardening that we tend to feel. And yet the wound is still there. It's just now covered over by a hard shell. And so we're being asked to activate our divine feminine energy that allows us to soften. And one of the ways that we can do that is by granting ourselves the compassion that we're doing the best we can. And this is easier said than done sometimes, but you're going to run into things even now, even as you have awareness of the energies that are most in alignment with the higher frequencies. You're still going to have days where you snap. You're still going to have days where you fall into fear. You're still going to have days where you fail to recognize someone else's needs are greater than your own. There are going to be days like that even as we work through this process because we're human. And what we're being asked by our teams right now is just to give ourselves the benefit of the doubt again, that we're doing the best we can. When we catch it, we try to adjust it and learn from it, but there's also something there that's hurting. There's a reason that we're acting from a less than highest potential energy, highest level of consciousness. There's a reason that that got triggered. And if we start with compassion and acknowledging that we're doing the best we can and soften to ourselves, it allows us to see it. And that can then allow ourselves to work into the healing aspect of it rather than getting caught up in that vicious cycle of, I can't believe I did that. I'm so ashamed of myself. Oh, this is the worst. I'm not growing. I'm not learning. And then you see how we just sort of are back in the pain rather than healing from it. And finally, the last part of the message is being willing to let go of thought patterns, of behaviors and ways of thinking that are keeping you stuck or keeping you out of your power. You might start, if you're not sure what those are, you might look at where you're being hard on yourself, because I feel like there's a clue there about what the thinking is that's going on. You can usually find patterns of things like black and white thinking, that's, all or nothing thinking, patterns of not enoughness, where you're putting other people's needs ahead of yours constantly and creating another cycle of pain because then you don't feel validated or seen or taken care of, and that's because you're self-abandoning. These are just a couple of ways, a couple of patterns that we might be holding on to that keep us feeling disempowered and block us from our ability to grow. So we're being asked to take a look at where we're being hard on ourselves, where we feel fear of moving forward, and we're going to see those patterns emerge. And now, to get us into our power, we need to think about the state we want to be in. For example, if you're a person who goes into fear a lot, a fear like about bracing for the future, you're just a little scared that maybe the worst thing's going to happen instead of the best thing. Well, when we get into those kinds of thoughts, we're practicing that state, whether we intend to or not. And so the solution is to quite simply practice the state you want to be in before you need it. For example, if You always find yourself bracing around payday because of bills that you have to pay. You're practicing a state of bracing. You're practicing a state of scarcity and lack. But you really want to feel abundant and expansive and relaxed around paying your bills. You're going to have to practice that before payday. You know what I mean? We need to practice the state we want to experience before we're being tested on it. Another example would be if you want to feel brave when speaking to someone or speaking to a group of people, you don't wait till you're in front of a group of people to speak. You practice that state. You imagine them there before you have to be in front of those people so you can practice the state you'd like to be in. If you'd like to feel calm and grounded and in your power and safe, then you're going to have to practice those things before you get there. And this is why meditation is such a powerful tool, because if you want to be able to stay a tower of strength during turbulent times, you're going to have to practice that tower of strength before you need it. Because what happens when we're in these situations, when we're in our test, it's going to be our knee-jerk response that comes up. It's going to be the thing we practice the most. So if it's payday and we've practiced fear of scarcity the most, that's what's going to come up. If it's standing in front of a group of people and we've practiced anxiety more than a state of calm, the anxiety is what will come up. And it seems pretty simple, and yet it's so amazing how often we miss the opportunity to prepare ourselves to be in the state we desire. But you can do it easily. You can do it through meditation. In fact, I've created a whole bunch of meditations. They're here on my YouTube channel. You're going to see them come up. I think there's already one out as of right now. It's called Pause and Be in Your Power. I want to say that's the one. But they're quick meditations that I created to help you practice being in the state you desire before you need it, so that when you need it, if you're practicing it, that's the state that you're going to have more access to. So whatever we're practicing the most is what we're going to experience when we're being put on the spot. And if we're conscious about what we want to feel like, so if we want to feel abundant, or we want to feel powerful or calm, or we want to feel courageous or brave, if we practice it before we need it, we're going to be able to access those states. And so that's the message from the team this week. Next, let's look at the karma cards and see what they add to this week's message. All right, if you're new to karma cards, let me quickly show you how these work. I have 3 decks here: planets, signs of the zodiac, and the houses of astrology. And I've already asked my team, what's the message you have for us this week? And I've got 2 sets of answers: a set in red, which are action related, and a set in blue, which are outcome related. And the way that you play is you tune in with that beautiful intuition of yours and feel, what is the guidance you need this week? Are you looking for inspired actions to take, or are you interested in to see how things resolve over the next 7 days? And of course, you can always choose both. And while you are choosing, let me tell you the timing for this reading. This reading is for May 28th. Cannot believe we're at the end of May, through June 4th. And the flavor of this reading. All right, we've got Neptune. Neptune right now is in Pisces, so it's at its full strength in the sky. But when we're looking at it in this message, it's talking about inspiration, and it's talking about focusing on what we desire, but also this card often talks about sacrifice, which really is just another way to say surrender or let go. In the sign of Aquarius. So Aquarius, again, representing the future, the vision, what you're moving towards. So on one end, we're being asked to let go of something. On the other side, we're being asked to focus on what we're moving towards. And in the last place, the house is the 4th house, which is the past. So we've got this really interesting reading here about inspiration, visions, surrendering. We've got the future here, and we have the past. This will be a really interesting one to read, so let's check it out. All right, spiritual action at this time Inspire others with your vision as you did in the past. All right, I'm thinking about that trine between Jupiter and Pluto, which is happening this week. And what's really interesting is this, we've never seen this placement before. Pluto has never been in Aquarius in this lifetime, and Jupiter, the last time it was in Gemini was 12 years ago. So that's what, 2012, I believe? Yeah, 2012. So this is an interesting new energy because remember this trine is about the mind growing and expanding into its empowerment. And I feel like when it's talking about the growth at the beginning of our vision, anytime we get an idea or we're inspired, we're very clear about the growth path at the beginning. It's in the middle that we struggle the most, I would say, when it comes to whatever our vision is, but usually when we first feel inspired to grow in any direction, whether it's like growing into a better partner or growing into your ideal career or growing into the person you aspire to be, you're very clear about your growth path. And so in a way, it's asking us to go back to what inspired you. Now, today might be the first day you feel inspired for something, and so therefore you would reference today. But let's say you're working on something that you've been doing for years. Like if I think about my own life, when did my inspiration to do the work I'm doing right now, when did that really kick in? And what was the vision I was holding for myself? Not only will you feel re-inspired by that information, but as you focus on it and align your actions with that vision, you will naturally be an inspiration to others. Mental action at this time. Be prepared to sacrifice for what is new and different about your home base or your family. Everybody's shifting at this time, right? We're not the only ones. We're all going through this epic transformation, and all of us, whether we're conscious of it or not, are having those feelings of I need to grow and awareness of either what's empowering or disempowering in our life. That's coming up for people on all sorts of levels, whether they're, again, consciously aware of it or not. It's either happening internally and they're thinking about it, or they're starting to express it. And this is part of what the team was talking about, letting go of old things that don't work anymore, even old structures. And the family might restructure itself, your home, right? So the fourth house represents not only the past, but it represents the inner world, which your home would represent your inner world. Your immediate family and the family you grew up with also represent parts of your inner world. This inner world is restructuring for all of us. We are expanding our consciousness, and that starts from within. And sometimes we have to be willing to look at things and situations differently than we did in the past. Many times with our immediate family, with our intimate families, we have a tendency to keep people locked in a pattern. Well, I grew up with you, so I know who you are. But the reality is, do you know who that person is? Just because you grew up with them doesn't mean you know who they are now. But we sort of put an overlay on top of people based on our experience of them. And those relationships have the hardest time transitioning many times because there's a fixed energy to it. It's like, I've already figured you out. I've put you in your you box, and my brain is content with that because now I can think about something else. I already know you. I don't need to know anymore. And we have to untrain ourselves to do that. It's difficult, but it is the most consciousness increasing energy we could apply towards other people, giving them the benefit of the doubt that they too are growing and transforming and being willing to see that, which means sacrificing what I think I know about you. Now, some people might hear that and find it kind of scary. It's like, well, then I can't trust or depend on the person they are. And it's something that you, again, don't want to get into black and white thinking about it, like all or nothing. Either you're in this box or there's no box. And it's not quite that. It's like I have a loose interpretation of you, This is what I feel like I know and I feel like I consistently see, but I'm open to seeing more and I'm open to seeing how you're growing. And when we're doing that for others, we're also allowing ourselves to do it for ourselves because again, remember, our family and our home represent an aspect of our inner world. So when we're able to sort of unbox or expand our knowledge of someone that we feel like we know pretty well, we're allowing ourselves to do it for ourselves. So it's a two-way street. We could start with ourselves, which I always feel like is the core of what we should be doing, is focusing on like, how can I break this fixed idea I have of myself, especially if my fixed ideas aren't particularly positive. How could I expand on that? And then when we're doing it for those we are intimately connected to, how can I open up my experience, my understanding of you, so that I could allow myself to experience your growth and perceive that, and not only appreciate what I'm seeing, especially if they're growing in a way that's positive. You definitely want to be able to see that and support that, but also so you could do it for yourself, right? So it's a reciprocal energy. And it allows, especially if you feel like you're in a box and you're like, can't you see I'm different now? If you're experiencing on the other end where you feel boxed and like your growth and your own transformations aren't being perceived, this could be sort of a beautiful and gentle way to allow that perception to open up. And it starts within. It always does. Doesn't mean we're going, if you figure it out now or you allow yourself to do it now, doesn't mean you're going to get immediate like return on that. But people notice and they take it in. And the more consistently they can see that from you, the more they respond to it. And so there is a type of freedom in this letting go, a type of release and opening that they're asking for us. It's very gentle and subtle, by the way. It's nothing harsh or dramatic. It's more an adjustment in the mind again. Physical action at this time, yielding is the only way to use an unconventional way and do what makes you feel secure. So again, this isn't a very internal action. Whenever you get something like the fourth house, which is ruled by Cancer, and a planet like Neptune, these are very internal places. They are not planets or signs or houses that represent expansive outward energy. It's very inner directed energy. And so again, we're being asked to right now break apart, let go, surrender the need to have it figured out, or surrender the desire to always follow the same path, right? So again, with Aquarius here, it's talking about using an unconventional way. So this is different. It's going to feel different. And weirdly, it's going to make you feel a little bit better this time. Usually the conventional path makes us feel like we know what's up. In this case, being willing to surrender this, I think I know who you are. I think, when I think about, my husband or something like that, it's like, yeah, I think I know who this person is. I've spent, 22 years with them. I feel like I should know who they are. And yet I'm willing to surrender that I know everything, or that who you are is sort of locked in for me. I'm going to open up and allow myself to see other aspects of you that maybe I haven't noticed fully. Because again, when our brain categorizes things, it does so it can move on. It's not constantly going, what is that? What is my husband? What is that guy? Once it feels like it's figured it out, it's like, nope, got it. Know who that one is. Moving on, right? It's not contemplating it anymore. And that's what our left hemisphere wants so much. It wants to categorize, it wants to box, it wants to store it away so that it can process new information and do the same with that. Doesn't matter what it is, a person, place, or thing. It wants to figure it out. It wants to say, I know what this is, and it wants to move on. So what this is asking us to do is open up those boxes and look through them and be like, well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I even know myself. Now, some of you might feel like, yeah, I don't ever feel like I fully know myself. And that's a legitimately interesting place to be, I think. It's not that I want people to walk around without clarity or feeling sure. It's mostly when we're not 100% sure. When we haven't like written it off as I know this. It's just like what I was saying before. I think it was last week or the week before, but you want to be the river and not the stone. The stone, the static energy would say, I already know what this is. I don't need to know anymore. Therefore, you stop learning. When you open it up, right? You can say, I feel like I know this person, but there's more to learn. When you even just add that statement, now you're the river and more information can flow to you and you get to see new things and you continue to grow and expand. And so it's not black and white. It's not unbox it completely. It's simply open it and be curious and say things like, I feel like I know, but what else is there? And when we start questioning or being inquisitive or contemplative, that means the energy is continuing to flow and it's allowing our knowledge to expand. It's allowing for growth. It's allowing for, in this case, maybe relationships to expand as well. So now let's look at outcomes for Neptune in Aquarius and the fourth house of the past in your inner world. The spiritual outcome at this time is the idealization of genius to experiment with what makes you feel secure. So I feel like people are going to be really receptive to messages like this week about being open to seeing more, to opening up the mind and maybe exploring some of the ideas of our past, including, I think most importantly, our own behaviors, our own patterns, or our own thoughts about ourselves. Because as much as this can sort of reference those who are intimately close to us, again, that's an aspect of our inner world. And really, it's kind of looking at our own patterns. I tend to feel like sometimes we get a fixed idea of who we are, and we do tend to neuro-linguistically program ourselves by repeating things over and over again. Like, let's say you are a person who has a tendency to be clumsy. You might call yourself clumsy and be like, oh, I'm such a klutz. Oh, I'm so clumsy. Oh, I trip over everything. And it's like you've taken this in as a part of your personality and you've programmed it into yourself that that's who you are. And you've just decided, and it might have been because it was embarrassing to trip and fall so often. And by sort of being self-effacing, we saved ourselves a little embarrassment, right? We're like, oh, I'm such a klutz, allowing you to sort of write it off. But in doing so, also programming it in. And maybe secretly on some deep level, you want to feel graceful. You want to feel fluid. And you deny that from yourself because you've held this belief that the klutziness is who you are. And in this kind of situation, all it's saying is that there's an awareness here of, I don't have to be in that box. I don't have to limit myself like that. I can be both graceful and trust me, by the way, and this is just an odd example, but I used to dance in ballet for years and years. And when you see ballerinas on stage, they're so graceful looking. And behind stage, so klutzy sometimes, not all of them, but there, I was one of those. It's like, do we know how to walk? Like, are we capable of walking normally without running into furniture? And so all I'm saying is that it's very possible that you could experience both sides of the spectrum of grace to clumsiness, of anger and peace, of bravery and fear, of lack and abundance. It's all accessible to you. And I feel like at this time right now, there is this opening up of the mind where we're like, yeah, why am I pigeonholing myself or limiting myself with this old thinking? I can open it up and I can experience all. And in fact, I now allow myself to see I have been the whole time, which is why I have such an awareness of my clumsiness, because when I'm not clumsy, I'm quite graceful. Or when I'm not afraid of what I'm losing, I recognize my abundance. Or because I'm so abundant, I'm so aware of lack, right? Usually polarities offer us contrast and show us that the other exists. So if you're feeling lack, you also know what abundance is, right? If you're feeling afraid, you also know what courage is. We're just being asked to stop limiting ourselves to some degree, that we're one side of it or the other. We're both. And we're going to get this week, like, whoa, like just, whoa, I see it now. And I see that by allowing both to be true in my life, that it's not mutually exclusive from each other. I feel so secure. I feel so okay in this life. It's feeling a lot better to be in the life I live because I'm not missing anything. I was just seeing one side of it. Mental outcome at this time: confusion regarding the discoveries of support. I feel like this is going to be a hard one to explain to people if you're actively practicing this and sort of opening it back up and trying to have conversations or relate to this topic to other people right now, especially if it's sort of new for you to hold non-duality, meaning you're both, right? When we're having a hard time holding that, it can be really hard to communicate it. And in that struggle to communicate it can create personal confusion, right? So it's like, do I have this? Like, do I understand what I'm attempting to do here? And it's okay. I feel like it's something that you get through the practice, like the team was saying before, practicing the state more than talking about it. If you're just going to think about it, if you're just going to talk about it, you're going to sort of talk yourself into a circle and it's going to feel like you're not going anywhere. But if you're going to put it into practice, it's going to feel a little bit more like you're going to feel it sinking deeper into the muscle memory, into the nervous system, right? It's like it's going to take a little bit more, but just staying on that mental plane with it is going to cause you to sort of be chasing your tail. And physical outcome at this time: sacrifice resulting from the eccentricity of your home base or family. Again, this is more internal world stuff. So it's not something that communicates well right now. It's very dreamlike. So you know what it's like when you've had a dream and the message was so clear in the dream and you're like, oh my gosh, this is what it's about, and it felt very like important and detailed and deep, and then you wake up and you're trying to communicate it to people, and in the communication something gets lost in the translation. It just sounds wacky and weird, right? Like if I were to tell you about the dream I had last night about me riding this ferry and being the only car on the ferry and like having a hard time getting into my car in the dream, it felt very like, whoa, like something is here, something's happening, but trying to tell you about it is like, okay, that's odd, like, okay, weird. It just doesn't interpret well. There's a lot lost in translation at this point. So it's very much, I feel like the sacrifice here is really trying to communicate it or ask someone to get this concept. I feel like if you're seeing this message, you're just ready for it. I'm sure there's people who watch my channel who miss this one just because it's just not time to hear it for whatever reason. If you're hearing it and you're grokking it, congratulations, because it's a little bit of an abstract concept. Anytime we have Neptune in here, we're talking about abstraction. And Aquarius is just weird. I love Aquarius, don't get me wrong, but weird. It's out there. Aquarius is always at the cutting edge. So before people are ready for it. And then the internal world. There's a lot here that's not going to make sense in translation. But if you're practicing, again, practicing this state, allowing yourself to see that you're more than the sort of idea you have of yourself, which is something that have been talked about in spiritual circles forever. But this is just another way to sort of break that down and look at it. And understanding that there's some of these thoughts that you're holding about yourself, about your home base, those really close to you, that are limiting you and inhibiting your growth and empowerment. And at this time, if you're willing to kind of go there and say, I don't know what I don't know, show me more, it's going to be like that dream. hard to translate, hard to express, but deeply felt and understood. And something will shift and open, and you'll feel that exhilaration of like, in this weird moment, I actually feel more secure in myself. And so there is a win this week. It's just an odd way to get it, but trust the process, because this odd way is going to help you feel more secure in yourself. And with that, please like, share, and subscribe if you're watching this. If you're new to the channel, welcome. It's so nice to have you here. If you've been here before, I would love the support on my channel. If you're loving this video, please give it a thumbs up and leave me a comment. Do you understand? Did I interpret this enough that it made sense to you? Or does it seem abstract to the point of being a little weird, kind of like that dream? Either way, I'd love to hear from you, and it helps my channel grow. So if you could take a moment, my heart would be so happy. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And with that, I'm sending you lots of love. Mwah.